Ezra Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Avodah Zarah, daf Chaf, number 20. And we're going to start from a little bit before the Mishnah, actually towards the middle of the page of daf Yud Tes Amud Beis. And the Gemara just begins from Machris Rabbi Alexandria. The Gemara says, Machris Rabbi Alexandria. Rabbi Alexandria made an announcement. Man boyachaya, who wants to live? Man boyachaya. Who would want to live? In other words, he was asking a question that he has something special to show people that he has something special to show people that if you want an elixir of life, follow what I have to say. So a crowd gathered around Rabbi Alexandri, Omri and Lay, and they told him, Hav lanu chaya, give us the life that you promised us. Amalahu, so he said to them, Mi ho'ish hachofetz chaim nitzor l'shan chamera. So he just read a pasuk. Sometimes it's a pasuk that you know, but if you read it in a certain way with a certain tone, it has more of an impact on you. So Mi ho'ish hachofetz chaim, anybody who wants life, nitzor l'shan chamera. I think what it means is to guard your internal conversation from speaking negative. A person should always think positive. Shema yoima adam, and then it says, then your lips will not speak deceitfully. Shema yoima adam, maybe a person will say is, nitzarti l'shoini meira usvasai medaber mirma. I'm going to watch my tongue from my internal conversation from negativity, and my lips from speaking deceit. So now I'm done. So will that give me life, or will that make it all work? That's gareh b'sheina, and I'll just sleep away and sleep away my life. Talmud loyma su meirav asei tov. You have to do good things. You have to be challenged. You have to go out there in the world. Ein tov el Torah. Torah only refers to Torah. Do good. Shenema kelekach tov nesati lechem Torah al tazoivu. So you have to be out there in the world also to be challenged with negativity. So that's why you can't just say, I'm going to watch and be a loner, a hermit somewhere. No, you have to be in a place where you are challenged to sumeira, to turn away from bad and doing good. The Gemara continues, Hegia lekipa mokom shemamidim bo avodah zarah. They came, if you are working, you're allowed to work for avodah zarah. Let's say you're working for a base Avodah Zarah and you're doing the sidewalk there, so you're allowed to get paid. But if you're making the arch that's going to hold up the Avodah Zarah, so then you're making something actual that's going to be useful for the Avodah Zarah itself, then you're not allowed to take, and then you're not allowed to work there anymore. You have to quit your job. Amar Abloz, Amar Abchiyachnen, in Bana, if you actually worked there and you worked on the arch and it held up the Avodah Zarah, Scharai Mutar, then you're allowed to take payment. So the Gemara says, Pshita, that would be an obvious teaching. You didn't build the Avodah Zarah. You actually built something that's going to hold up the Avodah Zarah. Misham she Avodah Zarah hein, or Misham she Avodah Zarah, and it's something that just serves and supports the idol. Bein Rabbi Yishmael, Bein Rabbi Kiva, Einon Asurin, Achi Avdu. It's not Asur. It doesn't become a prohibited object until actually they hang the Avodah Zarah on it. But as long as they didn't hang the Avodah Zarah and serve the Avodah Zarah, the support for the Avodah Zarah is not usher. So of course you're allowed to take payment for building the kippah, the arch. Rabbi Yirmiyah explained, the teaching of Rabbi Yochanan was that if you actually build the Avodah Zarah, but they didn't have opening day, so to speak, for the Avodah Zarah. So nobody served the Avodah Zarah yet. Therefore, you're allowed to take payment for building the Avodah Zarah. Says the Gemara, Hanicha, that would make perfect sense. Liman diyama Avodah Zarah shel Yisrael sur miyad. That Avodah Zarah of a Jew is right away when you build an Avodah Zarah that belongs to a Jew, is also right away. Vishel goy, but if it belongs to a goy, achete avein, until the goy actually services the idol. So then I could say, Shaper, that's good, because once you build the idol that's belonging to Avodah Zarah, As long as they did not serve the idol yet, it's not an object of prohibition. And therefore, you can take payment for that. Elam, on the Rambam, according to the opinion that says, Shagoy Asur Miyad, as soon as you build an Avodah Zarah, that's going to belong to a goy. So even if the goy didn't use it yet, it becomes also right away. So how are you going to explain that Rabbi Yochanan said you can take payment for building the Avodah Zarah? As soon as you build it, it's an object of prohibition that you're not allowed to benefit from. And therefore, the person who built it should not be able to take any payment. Rabba explained, the teaching was regarding the final hammer blow onto this idol, the final stroke. So avodah zarah man kam garon. What makes something an idol? Gemar malacha, when you give it the final, when you're not going to work with it anymore. The aim is have a gemar malacha. When is the final? When is it 100% completed? But makois achrain, by the final stroke. But machas achrain les bar shava pruta. When you made that final stroke with the hammer onto the avodah zarah, you didn't do work, even a shava pruta worth. So that payment for the final stroke, you can take half a pruta for that. What about all the other strokes that you made to create the idol? Well, it wasn't an idol yet, and therefore you didn't do anything prohibited. So alma kasava. So we see an idea yeshnal schiras mitchila v'atzaif. That means when someone takes on a project, a construction project, so he's really technically owed the money at the end of the project. However, but he's working from the very beginning of the project, and every hammer blow for the project, he's like that's part of his payment. So he's actually getting paid from the very beginning. And the final blow is not that you owe him the whole money. The final blow is worth whatever it is, maybe a half a pruta. But when you tally it all up, you owe him a lot of money. So therefore, let's get it back to the Avodah Zarah. When you made an Avodah Zarah, the first 99 blows, right? So it wasn't an Avodah Zarah yet. So you're allowed to take payment. And then the final blow is not even worth a pruta. So you're allowed to take payment for that, even though at that moment it becomes an Avodah Zarah where it becomes Asr Bahana. This idea we're going to see right away in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, you're not allowed to make jewelry for Avodah Zarah, things that are going to hang around the Avodah Zarah, katlois, let's say a choker, nizamim, or a nose ring or earring, v'tabois, or regular ring. Rabbi Lezer says, once you made it, you're allowed to take payment for it. Like we said before, b'makois achrein, the last blow. Now the Mishnah says a new thing, another idea. And has really nothing to do with Avodah Zarah. In Eretz Yisrael, I'm not allowed to sell a goy a piece of property, real estate. We're going to see why. For one of the Shiva Amim, you're not allowed to sell them a piece of real estate. But you're allowed to sell them a tree that is, let's say, chopped down. That makes sense because it's not connected to the ground. Rabbi Yehuda says, you're allowed to sell even a tree, Amanas Lokitz, but the condition is that he has to cut it down right away. But all agree that you're not allowed to sell a piece of real estate to a guy. So the Gemara said in Eretz Yisrael. So how do I know that? Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina said, we go to Daf Chaf Amud Aleph, the pasuk says, Loich Sechanim. The Torah says, the Torah really means don't have rachmanis on them when I ask you to kill them. But Loich Sechanim means also don't let them camp. Don't let them camp in Eretz Yisrael by giving them the opportunity to buy a piece of land in Eretz Yisrael. So we see you're not allowed to sell a piece of land in Eretz Yisrael to a guy. Says the Gemara, beautiful thing. Gemara says, means it also teaches us the idea is that you're now allowed to give a goy a compliment, which we'll see what that means in a second as an example. But giving a guy a compliment, saying he's very handsome or something like that, you're not allowed to do that. So so the Chosei Chonim should teach us only that. You're not allowed to give a compliment to a guy. Answers the Gemara, Im Kain, if it was true, let it, the Torah, it says, don't give them a compliment with the vav. That it's not, and I would be able to spell it without a vav also. My l'sechonein. Why does it spell it without a vav and it's pronounced loisechonein? Shmami no tarte. So you see, the other idea is that you're not allowed to sell them a piece of real estate. Says the Gemara, I still needed to teach you another idea. You're not allowed to give a free gift to a guy. It doesn't have to, we're not talking about land, just a free gift to a guy you're not allowed to give. So that's what it says. Don't give them chinam. Don't give them something for free. Answers the Gemara, in Cain, if it was only teaching you that idea, it should say, don't give them something for free with a yud. My loisachon name, Shmami Nakuli teaches you all three ideas, and that's what the Gemara is going to repeat now. Tanya Name Hachi, we learned in a Braisa, loisachonim, don't give them loitite lehem chanoya bakarka. That teaches you one idea of you're not allowed to sell a piece of real estate to a goy in Eretz Yisrael. Davaracha, another pshat, loisachonim, loisitin lehem chen. You're not allowed to give them a compliment, and we're going to discuss this idea in a moment. Davaracha, loisachonim. What does Lois Chanim teach you? The third idea. You're not allowed to give them a free gift. Now, the Gemara discusses first the free gift. Whether you're allowed to give a goy a free gift is a machlokes tanoim, actually. The Tanya we learned in the Braisa. The Torah tells us, anything that is, any animal that died without shechita is called a nevela. You're not allowed to eat it. What the Torah tells you what you should do with it. So the Torah says lager to a goy that is mekabel the sheva mitzvahs. That's called a ger, a good guy. Asher b'sherecha that lives in your city. Titnana, let him give it to him. V'achala and eat it. Then the Torah says, "Oi, I'll give you another idea what to do with this nevela. Mochor l'nachri, sell it to a goy." So the Torah, a regular guy that's not mekabel and doing the sheva mitzvahs. So the Torah tells you two ideas what to do with this animal. So the Gemara says, and this is the opinion of Rameir, if you read the pasuk directly, Einli elel ger ben esina l'goy ben mechira. I would only see this idea that for a ger tzedek, a ger toishav, you're allowed to gift it, but for a regular guy, you must sell it. L'ger ben mechira benayin. How do I know? Maybe I'm allowed to sell it to a ger also. Maybe the Torah is telling me I'm also allowed to sell it to a ger toishav. Talmud Loima, yes, you're right. Because you can read it like this. Don't eat the nevela, lager asher b'sherecha, for the ger, titnena v'achala, oy mochar, and stop. You'll read the pasuk, you should give it to them and eat it as a free gift, or sell it to them. Now the Gemara asks, l'goy b'nesina menayin. How do I know that to a goy, for a gift, you're allowed to give it to? Then you read it this way. You read it all together. You read it all together. You can gift it and eat it and let him eat it, or sell it to a guy. So even to a guy, you're allowed to gift it. So a mayor holds you're allowed to give a free gift of an avela to a guy. Doesn't matter, a ger or a guy, you're allowed to give them a free gift, and you're allowed to sell it to him. Therefore, Rameir holds you're allowed to give a free gift to a guy. Then the Rabbi Yehuda says, Devarim kiksav, and you have to read it literally. The ger ben esina, for ger toishev, you only gift it. Well, a goy, but a regular goy, b'mechira, you're only allowed to sell it. So said Gemara, Shapik Hamalei Rameir. Rameir seems to say correct. Rabbi Yehuda Amalach, Rabbi Yehuda will tell you, if the Torah was not particular, like Rameir said, then Lichtev Rachman, the Torah could have easily written Nana v'achala umachar, give it to them to eat it, or an umachar could also mean or sell it to them. Why does the Torah single out the word oi? Oi lamali, the actual word oi, because the vav sometimes can mean or. By saying or, shma mina, the devarim kiksav hu dasa. It's trying to tell you, read it exactly. The Torah wrote out the word aleph vav to tell you read it exactly, that only to a ger you're allowed to gift it, For a goy, you're not allowed to gift it, but you're allowed to sell it. For Rav Meir, he says you're allowed to even gift it to a goy. The guy. Torah is telling you the idea is if you're gifting it, then you should really gift it. You should give preference to gift it to a ger than to sell it to a guy. Because a ger, at the very end, he took upon himself the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, and we want to give him support, so every now and then give him a gift. But Enechanami, Rav Meir holds you can give a gift to a guy. Rabbi Yehuda, the Torah wouldn't, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Torah doesn't have to tell you that. Kivin the ger at the mitzvah lahachi aisoi, the goy at the mitzvah lahachi aisoi, lahaktem like tzarich. Then, since to a ger you are commanded to support him, and a goy who's not keeping the Sheva mitzvahs, you're not commanded to help him out. So lahakdim like tzarach cross. So the pasuk doesn't have to tell you, oh, give a gift to a ger. Of course, you have to give a gift to a ger, because you have a commandment from somewhere else that you should support a ger, a goy that's keeping the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei noya. So since the Torah didn't have to write that, the oy means to be particular, that only to a ger are you allowed to gift it. To a goy who's not keeping Sheva mitzvahs b'nei noya, you're not allowed to give him any free gifts. Now we go back to paying a compliment to a guy. You're not allowed to give a compliment to a guy. So this is a very fascinating Gemara. It's good to remember this. Masai Le Rav, this supports what Rav said. The Amar Rav, a person's not allowed to say Kamanoa Goyazu. A person's not allowed to say how pretty this female goy is. So the Gemara, because you're giving a compliment. So it says the Gemara, Meisvei, I'll ask you a question. Malsa, there's a story about Tanoim. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, he's one of the steps of the old Beis Hamikdash. Obviously, it was destroyed already. So he was sitting there, or standing on the Harabayas, and he saw a beautiful, pretty female guy. Omar, he said, Marabu Masach Hashem. How great is the handiworks of God, that He created such a beautiful creature. Rabbi Kiva Ra, and then so that's one case that the Tanoim complimented a female goy. Rabbi Kiva Ra Aces Turnavrifis Rasha. Rabbi Kiva saw the wife of Turnavrifis the Rasha. Rock, he spit to her. Sachak, he laughed. Ubach, and he cried. Rock, he spit at her because she was so pretty. To remind himself that she came from a drop of semen, a soiled semen. Sachak, he laughed. He understood in his Ruach HaKodesh, Rabbi Akiva, that this woman is going to become a convert, and actually he's going to become the second wife of Rabbi Akiva. Bacha, Rabbi Akiva cried, that eventually she's not going to be so pretty because she's going to die. So we see from there that Tanoim, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel both complimented a female goy. So how did Rav say that you're not allowed to compliment the female goy? Since the Gemara, Rav, Aduyu the Kamoide. They weren't complimenting the goy, they weren't paying her a compliment, they were complimenting God. The Amamar, Haroya Brias Toives, if you see beautiful creatures, let's say you see a beautiful horse or a beautiful cow. So Oime Barak Kacha Bar, you say a bracha that so HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates such beautiful creatures in His world. So there's a bracha to say. So if you're complimenting God, then it's permitted to comment on the beauty of a female guy. Says the Gemara, but how is that possible? Was it possible for them to stare at a guy? Meisvei. The pasuk says, I'll ask you a question, a difficulty. The pasuk says, "V'nishmata b'kol davara." You have to be careful from doing any bad thing. What does that mean? So we darshan shalei yistakel adam be'ishana. A person should not stare at a pretty woman, v'afil pnuya, even if she's unmarried. Be'ishes ish, even a married woman, v'afil mucha eres, even though she's not so pretty. Why? Because when an ishes is that's not so pretty, it's still a married woman. And the point of not staring at a woman is so that you don't have sinful thoughts. We go to Amid Beis. You're not allowed to go to the colored clothing of a woman that he knows, he starts thinking about the woman that wore these clothing, that it beautified her, and he starts to have sinful thoughts about her. And then you're not allowed to even look at this. Right? You're not allowed to look at two donkeys. Two swines. Not two birds. You're not allowed to stare at them when they're mating with each other. Now, even if you have so many eyes, like the angel of death, and you're so curious you can't hold yourself back, you have to push yourself not to see these things. Again, you're not allowed to be maharher. You're not allowed to look at something that could bring a sinful thought. The Gemara just brings as a side point, Amru olav al malach hamavos, it said about the angel of death, Shekulay male einayim. He's an angel that has full of eyes, that has a lot of eyes. B'shas pitirasay shel chayla, when the sick person is about to pass away, if he stands on top of his head, he has an unsheathed sword in his hand, and there's a drop of poison at the end of the sword. As soon as the sick person sees the malach hamabes, so mizdazeya, he gets frightened, and opens his mouth. And the malach hamabes quickly throws the poison into the mouth. The Gemara just gives you a description of what happens at the time of death. From that poison, the person dies. From that poison, the person becomes putrefied. And from that poison, the face of the deceased becomes green. So that was just a side point. But the whole point of this brisa is that a person should not do something that brings him to a sinful thought. So the question was, how were these Tanoim allowed to look at a pretty guy? It brings to a sinful thoughts. So how were they allowed to stare at a female guy? And says the Gemara, Karen Zovi is Hava. Actually, it was by accident. They couldn't avoid it. They were turning a corner, and the guy was turning the other corner, and they sort of had to pass each other inadvertently. So he was able to take a good look at her, and because of that, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel complimented God for creating such a beautiful person. Then we learned in the Brisa of Eloi b'vigdei tzeva shel isha, one is not allowed to look at the colored clothing of a woman. Not only if it's on a chair or something, even if it's stretched out over on the wall. I guess Amar and Papa says but it must be that you know who's the owner of it. Because if it's just a plain piece of clothing, then how are you going to have sinful thoughts? Amar Rava says, Deikanami, it's true. The Ketani v'loy b'bigdi seva shel isha. It says of a woman. V'loy Ketani b'bigdi tzevoinim, their clothing, because we are talking about women. Shma minoah b'bigdi seva shel isha. The Bryce is stressing of a woman that you do know personally. If it's just her clothing, then if it's just her clothing and you know who's the owner of that piece of clothing, then you're not allowed to stare at that clothing, colored clothing. Amar Rav Chiza said, Harimili ba'atika, an old clothing that she wore many times. Ava b'chadete, if it's a new clothing, maybe she didn't even put it on, less lamba, there's no problem with you looking at it. The Eloi Temahach, if you're not going to say like that, Anan monolashpura hechi avina. How do we ever give a item to the cleaners or to a tailor? Hakamastakel. He's staring at the clothing. The answer is because he never really saw her wear it. He's making the clothing, amending the clothing. So therefore, if the woman never wore the clothing because it's a brand new clothing, then you're allowed to stare at that clothing. So the Gemara says, basically you're saying a tailor or cleaner is the same as every other person. And only if the woman never wore the clothing, then they're allowed to deal with that clothing. Well, Tamech, if that's the reason, Hadamar Rabbi Yehuda said, a person who's in the business of mating animals, he's allowed to take the male organ and insert it into the female organ to mate the animals. But isn't he staring as he's performing this act? So how did Rabbi Yehuda permit that? You must say, when somebody's at his job, it's not a problem. So because normally, if you're not at your job, you're not allowed to stare at two animals mating. But if that's your job and you're in that business, then you're allowed to do it because you're busy with your work. So also over here, even if it's a tailor that knew the woman that one time wore this clothing, he's allowed to mend it because he's busy in his job, and therefore it's not a problem. Omamar, we learned before, the menu mace. From this, the woman from the Gemara continues and just says to the side point about the Malach HaMavis. The Malach HaMavis said that from the drop of poison that drops from the sword of the Malach HaMavis, a person dies. Nema pligi Davud Shmuel. Would you say that that this Brisa disagrees with the father of Shmuel? Because from the Brisa it seems that a person dies from the poison of the Malach HaMavis. But the Amar Avu, the Shmuel, the father of Shmuel, said, Amali Malach HaMavis, he had a conversation with the angel of death, and the angel of death told the father of Shmuel, if I wasn't concerned about human dignity, have a piranha base of shchita, I would have uncovered and show you the bloody, slaughtered trachea and windpipe of a human being, kebehema, like an animal. So it seems that the Malach HaMavis internally slaughters a human being and cuts him from the inside. So how could you say that the Malach HaMavis kills a person via a poison? And says the Gemara, Dilma ahi tipa mechatcha luhu l'samanim. Yes, he drops the poison into the mouth of the victim, but it gets to his trachea and windpipe, and therefore it cuts through those pipes. Mimeno masriach. From this poison, it putrefies the dead body. Messiah laid Rab Chanina bar Kahana. This is a support to Rab Chanina bar Kahana. Said Rab Chanina bar Kahana said, Amr Beid Rav. They told us in the yeshiva, Haroitzish lo yasriach meisoi yahav chena al panav. Whoever wants that his dead relative should not smell, putrefy. So Yahav Chena al Panav should turn the body over so his face is facing the floor. And that way, I guess maybe the poison comes out, or somehow his face is not going to even turn green or putrefy so fast. That's what he described. Okay, we will continue this tomorrow.